Welcome to the world of Priesthood Dispatches, where we tell your stories from the front lines of high-demand religion.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. We have the wonderful Maven with us this evening.
Hello.
Fantastic. And just a quick date check, it's the 11th of February 2022 for anyone listening in the future. I hope things got better for all of us. If you are new to the channel, please like and subscribe and share with your friends wherever you feel it's appropriate. If you're listening on the podcast, hello, please leave a review and make sure it's 5 stars like you would for other people that you like. If you feel that you can contribute to the podcast or to the show, you can use the QR code just above Maven's head or the link in the show description. And a big thank you to Fallen Hearts, who put together that awesome music on the intro there, and to Doug and Tom for your tips last week. They were fantastic. So this evening, Maven, it's got to be a little bit different being on a smaller show than the massive Mormonism live juggernaut that you're used to.
It's fine.
Yeah, you can.
The experience is the same, I think.
Yeah,
and I'm excited to be here.
Slum it for an hour. Fantastic. Okay, so we've got some news. This past week in Mormonism has been just crazy. Like,
right,
what's been going on? We've just had so many people like grab their feet and just stick them in their mouth like they were just hankering for a lollipop. But today some news came out that was the reversal of a reversal of a reversal type situation within the church. We know a few months ago President Nelson sent Wendy out of the room one night and got his little notepad out, and he got a message from the Lord cancelling the Saturday evening session of conference that was alternated Priesthood and Relief Society. So he totally cancelled it. 3 days later, the Lord came back and said, we kind of want to keep it, just make it a special session that isn't really that special because it's just the same. Okay. And then today, the Lord has come again, lucky boy, and he has brought back the sisters session. Woo! How do you feel about that, Maven?
I mean, I don't know how to feel about some of these things anymore, to be perfectly honest. Like, I do like things to be equal because they did kind of bring back, I don't know. I like that there's a women's session. It would be nice if it was completely run by us, but we of course know that the end speaker is going to be one of the first presidency, and that's going to be the main draw, and the most attention will be paid to the man that does it. So yeah, if we're honest, you know,
he might do a Gordon B. Hinckley and use it as a vehicle to announce like world changing the family proclamation,
something that was never like that he didn't consult with any of the women in leadership on as well.
Just gonna ride roughshod right over the top of you. Okay, well, moving swiftly on, this week on TikTok has been just absolutely hopping because, you know, and the church should know by now that Zooming all of these meetings, like when I was growing up, to have a camera in the chapel was like, it's like you brought Satan in your pocket with you. You couldn't take a photo in the chapel. Even when I got married, so over here we do it in the chapel first, then at the temple. We couldn't take any photos of like the bride or groom in the chapel, the ceremony, even though it was just a random, like a baptism. And it was all really important not to have cameras in the chapel. Whereas now they just stick them everywhere. to their own demise because Brad Wilcox, screwed up. But let's just have a quick look at what Brad had to say for us. Just make sure we get the right. Here we go. Brad, he's a good-looking guy.
Wilcox.
Maybe some people can leave some churches and they don't miss that much. But you leave this church, you miss everything. You miss everything. Words. If you haven't yet run into somebody who gets a little uptight when you say this is the only true church, then you will run into somebody who will get uptight because they don't like that. They don't think that sounds very tolerant. How many of you used to play church? I'm glad to see a few hands go up. My kids played church. They'd pull out the stuffed animals. They'd put them on the couch. They'd sing the song. They'd do the talk. Got a little nervous when my daughter started blessing the sacrament. But so you want to walk away from the church? Say goodbye to your whole concept of God. I had some kid at BYU say to me, I don't believe in Joseph Smith anymore, but I still believe in God and Jesus. And I said, look, I don't mean to be rude, but do you realize how stupid you just sounded? He's like, what? I said, you don't believe in Joseph Smith, but you still believe in God and Jesus. You separated them. Who taught you to do that? Who taught you that they're separate beings? Joseph Smith. So don't tell me you don't believe in Joseph Smith anymore when your whole concept of God, your whole covenant relationship with him is thanks to Joseph Smith. Now you want to leave the church? Well, say goodbye to the knot in the end of your balloon.
Heard.
How come the blacks didn't get the priesthood until 1978? What's up with that, Brother Wilcox? What, Brigham Young was a jerk? Members of the church were prejudiced? Maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe instead of saying, why did the blacks have to wait until 1978? Maybe what we should be asking is, why did the whites and other races have to wait until 1829? If you walk away from this religion, you lose everything.
Imagine being sat on the stand behind him. Oh,
You know, it was pointed out the one is, you know, if we're looking at the video, it's to our right, at the far right. It seems to be really uncomfortable sometimes. Like he's touching his head too at that point.
yeah.
I mean, we can't say we don't know what was in his head, but
I could take a good guess. You know, when the visiting, you know, you've got Brad Wilcox of the General Young Men's Presidency of the whole church coming to speak to the youth of your stake, and you get to be there with him, and he stands up and does that. Because I think he was trying to be down with the kids, wasn't he? He was trying to be like, oh, what's up with
Trying
that, Brother
very hard.
Wilcox? And I think sometimes kids just see through it these days, you know.
I think so. I mean, I don't know. I was extremely devout and scrupulous as a teen, and so I could see myself, had this happened, you know, for me, as extremely entertaining, if I'm perfectly honest. So I think there's some youth, definitely there's some that are probably falling for it or in line with it.
Okay.
But overall, I would agree with you that this newer, younger generation just seems way more on the ball with stuff like this, and I'm happy to see it.
Yeah, and I think Brad hit maybe four key points across his talk. One that was really evident was, if you leave this church, you lose everything. You know, the knot in your balloon, everything gone, because apparently Brad has experience of leaving the church, so he knows what you lose. He can't be speaking from experience there, so I think that's a big supposition. His next one, he had a real thing about the sisters, and I know you've spoken previously about how you felt about, you know, the way he spoke about his young daughter blessing the sacrament.
Right, because I don't think I ever pretended to bless the sacrament, but I did remember thinking, I mean, in my mind, I was thinking, bless her heart, because she still doesn't know. Now, of course, I'm sure this is a long time ago story. I think Brad's old enough that his children are all grown. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming his daughter has, you know,
Yeah.
filled the very narrow row that she was taught to by her dad, probably. But yeah, I remembered when I was that girl and was still blissfully unaware, even though it was all around me, still didn't quite get it. It hadn't sunk in. And I remember the exact moment that the hammer dropped on that. So that might be a story for another day. But I remember very, very clearly that when I learned that I couldn't ever have the priesthood because I'm a girl, and because God said so. Like my heavenly Father doesn't want me to do something because I'm a girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and that's always going to be, you know, until, or some would say that Joseph Smith taught that sisters would have the priesthood, and the community of Christ obviously have gone with that
Mhm.
and allow the sisters to have the priesthood. In fact,
Supposedly, there's a quote too from Gordon B. Hinckley who said it could happen someday. I remember that going around during the ordained women movement. So,
yeah,
and that was something that I held on to at the time, because I disagreed with the ordained women movement and how they were doing things, because that's not the proper way. You know, we don't counsel the brethren kind of thing. But there were things that I never did understand, never ever, just why being female, meant we couldn't ever have God's authority to do good things, like give blessings of healing for the sick or passing the sacrament. It's a sacred ordinance. So it just never made sense to me.
you know what? It's totally nuts because we had Margaret Toscano on the show a few weeks ago, and she was fantastic, and we were speaking about it, and I felt like the church has just ignored half of their membership for almost 200 years. And where would the church be now if they had utilized that half of the membership and, you know, allowed them to bring their care in? You know, everyone's got different traits. To be honest with you, I think a lot of women make better business people because very analytical and multitasking. Anyway, without getting off in those weeds,
So
Brad,
no, and
go on.
yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I know what you mean. I think from the studies I've seen, the reason why women can often be really changing in leadership is that women generally are better at being egalitarian versus hierarchical. So when you have more women in leadership, just things really do get better for everybody else,
Yeah.
at all levels, because they care about that. And again, I don't want to make a sweeping rule. There's always exceptions. You can definitely have narcissistic, power hungry women, just like you can men who just want to rise to the top. But in general, and of course, you can have men that really do care about equality. But yeah, and the same with government. When there's more women in government, things start to become more egalitarian. So
Yeah.
I think the church would look very, very different if it had actual power, like if women's voices had actual power from the beginning. I think we would have gotten our rights. I mean, like the ERA, I think would have passed. I think we would have, fought for that instead of against that. And I think the LGBTQ issue would be way different now, because there's just so many mothers who will choose to love their child, and many have, over the church. So yeah, I think women would have gotten to the point much sooner where, we know and we realize that this is not a choice, and more compassionate. So
Yeah.
yeah, and obviously polygamy would not ever, ever, ever have happened if
Could-
there was
could you-
really.
Could you have
Yeah.
imagined if Brigham had been like, "Oh, let me consult one of my
Let me
counselors"?
ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't have happened. Okay. Other things that Brad really had like a bee in his bonnet about. One was other churches, and that goes back to the playing. He really wanted to set up the fact that the Mormon church was the church, and all these others are just, you know, they're playing church. They don't have the authority. They don't have what you can have here. So I thought that was interesting. And then obviously he comes down to the real, I guess, kicker, the one that really stood out and stuck in the craw, and that was his blacks in the priesthood quote, where he basically said, "You're asking the wrong question. You should be asking, why didn't the whites or other races get it until 1829? So he was kind of one-upping the African race by saying we're worse done to because we didn't get it till 1829,
Right.
which I think is a really bad place to start.
It really is. Yeah. Yeah, that's an understatement.
Yeah,
And you know, and people have pointed out, and you said this at the beginning, it's surprising that the church, you know, would put cameras up, and I think I was thinking part of the reason is as people were sharing, like this talk has been given over and over, and there's videos, older videos out there. So I wonder if the church just think they can get away with it, because there really is a Mormon bubble that John DeLynn talks about, where just the information just does not pass through. Even things that make it to national news sometimes don't make it through the bubble. And so I think they just thought maybe they could get away with it because they already had been. So how could you have known that this time the same talk, you know, that's already out there, it finally hit the fan?
Yeah. Well, what's fantastic is that on YouTube there is already a live stream scheduled for Edmonton in Alberta, Canada, where Brad Wilcox will be talking to the youth this coming Sunday evening. I'm
It
sure
hasn't been canceled?
No, not yet. It's still
Okay.
there for now.
I look forward to, I really want to see it.
Yeah,
I really, really want to
like
see
if
it.
he gives the same talk, I'll eat my
Oh, I
hat.
doubt it. I doubt he
Yeah.
will. But I
Okay,
need to
well,
write this down because this is news to me. So I
yeah,
want to make sure.
Edmonton, Canada,
Okay.
Sunday the 20th.
I will be there. I will find a way to watch it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Okay, awesome. So moving on from Brad, because I
We've
think
got more. We've got worse.
Brad kind of overshadowed his friend Keith Erickson, church historian. We know Keith on the channel because we've dissected Keith meticulously here on the channel. But Keith gave us something at a BYU invitational that kind of just turned the church on its head from what I remember growing up and from what I taught my children. Let's have a look what he's got.
Do not urge us to follow or imitate them. We must not elevate the childhood game of follow the leader into a false template for human imitation. Stated another way, the prophets do not teach us to follow them.
We often speak of our need to follow the prophet.
As our primary children sing, follow the prophet, he knows the way.
Okay, I think we know without causing too much trauma listening to the primary children. Keith basically, he was trying to tell people what he usually says is, don't think about church history in a binary way. Was it right? Was it wrong? It's all in the gray. And the message he was trying to get across was, don't follow the prophet, follow Jesus, which is a great message because we know that the prophets over time have said things that contradict one another. And I think that's what it is really. There's a whole road of prophets that they've driven over as they've thrown them under the bus. And now they're saying, well, don't lose your testimony because of what Brigham Young said. Don't lose your testimony because of what Heber J. Grant said. Follow Jesus, but then follow him through the current prophet.
I think was that because where it cut off, he was saying the prophets don't say to follow them. So I think was he saying after that they would basically we follow Jesus through them. I haven't seen the talk the whole way through, but I assume that's where he was going.
He says the prophet says don't follow them. They say hear him.
Right.
So which is great, but
which is the same thing though.
Yeah, because if you
Let's be honest.
if you take away the prophet and you just say hear him, then haven't you taken away the whole point of the church?
Right.
So
and it's so funny he brought up follow the leader because that's like such a short, quick phrase. And I feel like anytime it's obvious that when you would say follow the leader, everybody who's ever been Mormon or had anything to do it would know that song and would think follow the prophet. It's like he almost calls it to your mind by using that phrase.
Yeah. And
ironic.
I remember even we're going to get to missionary, but as a missionary, we were always told to model everything we did on the brethren. The way that we tied our ties, small knots, because big knots were the fashion, the way that we cut our hair, the color of the suits that we wore, the types of shirts that we wore, everything had to be the way that President Hinckley had it and the way that his counselors, etc., had it. So we were, it was that fastidious that we had to follow the prophet in word, deed, and action. And apparently we don't now, which is great,
Yeah, I think in some ways that's a good thing. There are certain things you don't want to emulate, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. The final TikTok. This is one I found.
This one I haven't seen.
Yeah, this is the one I found today that wasn't planned to go in the show, but it pissed me off that much that it had to go in. And this one comes from a 1971 BYU production called Fat Fighters. Let's just have a quick look here of what we've got. It's a duet, so you've got to put up with like two of me, but the audio's great.
Same thing. I felt the same way she has too. At times I felt like, well, why do I have to lose weight? People look at me, but it doesn't really bother them. So why should it bother me? I have to have a motivation.
This is part of our commitment action approach to weight control. The girls meet weekly in therapy sessions where behavioral change is emphasized. Overweight people tend to be dishonest, inconsistent, and irresponsible.
What?
Yes, this is why I put it in. It's unreal, isn't it?
That is, but I feel like it really goes right along with the church, with just almost everything they say. There's usually no data ever to back stuff up. So just the audacity that leaders have, I think they just it feels right to them to say things, and so they do. I think partly because of the idea of priesthood and revelation. And I mean, what I'm thinking of is Tad Callister and the talk, or was it a blog post or something? I think people know what I'm talking about. He did the whole, it was very coded language, but it's very obviously against LGBTQ, basically bringing Satan back in again. And, just that whole talk, like one of the things he went into was just really kind of the right-wing conservative talking points where like the government is being the husband to unwed mothers, and we're basically causing we're basically making it okay to be a single mother, and all this kind of a stuff, and just that, again, the very end of the whole point of the thing was if we can turn back to traditional family values, the nuclear heterosexual family, that all these problems in the world would be solved. But there is absolutely no data ever anywhere to support that, and all of the data is against that. But I just remember just thinking when I was reading that, just how easy it was for him to just throw that out there, that the way to solve the world's problems is to go back to this idea of nuclear family, and it's just not true. So it doesn't surprise me that they would just be so bold as to say like people who are overweight tend to be more dishonest. Like there's just
I think what they've done there is they've gone through 100 years worth of criminal records and weighed everyone, and they found scientifically that people with a BMI above let's say 32 tend to be bank robbers. So it's and I hear that there is a change to the Temple Recommend interview coming, and they're going to have a set of scales, and they're going to have a BMI figure, and if you're over it,
oh man,
you're in trouble. But the fact that it was only girls, okay, so it was like, oh, we want our women to be beautiful and the ideal of a Western, supermodel. So it was only girls. The guy who was leading it was sat back with a paunch. He'd got a belly on him. And that the girls even in it were saying, why does it matter? People aren't bothered. Why do I have to be here? And the whole video is about 20 minutes long. Yeah, you can find it on YouTube. I'll post it on my
have to
Facebook
watch
page.
I feel like being enraged.
It's crazy. Just the way that they stereotype just women, girls, and as they've got them eating donuts, all them shots of
Look at these gluttonous women. Like, right.
Matilda, the movie Matilda, where there's the kid who's eating the chocolate cake, and it shows you him like licking his lips and eating. It's like that,
and it's all over his face.
Yeah. They've got mothers with children kind of dragging them along behind them, stuffing donuts in their face, and you're just like, man, who came up with this crap?
There's a lot more to that. I think it's still on the website. There's an old Ensign article, and it was written by a woman, and it was about sister missionaries. And now I kind of wish that I had looked it up before, because I brought up with you before when we were talking about this, and I don't know if we want to go ahead and segue into that now about dressing grooming standards for sister missionaries. Okay, so I'm trying to think so everyone gets a packet for their mission, with mission information, the general rules, something specific to your mission. And so this was part of my packet here. And so this was in 2008, or actually maybe towards the end of 2007 that I got this. So these are the examples that I was given. And maybe I don't know, make some of these a little bit bigger. Let's see if I can do that just to make it easier to see. And so, I mean, even back then, this is a while ago now, sisters obviously were able to find more attractive ways to dress. And, not that the models here are unattractive, but just that, I mean, obviously the clothing is very old fashioned, or maybe not old fashioned, but just not age appropriate. So I got this. And of course, my reaction was like, ugh. But I was trying to find, I did the best I could, because no one, wants to look like a dud. But there's some more right here, some examples and some example shoes. Anyway, so this is what we were given. And I learned something. This happened in a special meeting. I think, we can take this down or keep it up, whatever you want. I think maybe every mission has one of these, maybe not all the time, but I think the watchers will know a special meeting for the elders, the special meeting for the elders where the mission president has something that he wants to talk about with them. So our mission had a special meeting just for the elders. It was going to happen at Zone Conference, and they were just going to release the sisters to go home while our mission president had a man-to-man talk. And one of the sisters, and I love her to death, she's actually my granddaughter in mission speak. I trained her trainer. She wasn't with me or my companion at the time, but she'd heard about it. And so she's a feminist at heart. So she thought, if the men are going to have their man-to-man talk, chastity talk, because let's be honest, like that's what it is. She's like, the women should too. Women also have chastity issues. Not that she did, but she just like, if the boys are having their talk, like we want us to have our talk too. So they went ahead and did it. So the men all met with the mission president, and us sisters, we all sat with the mission president's wife, of course, who I loved. She's an amazing, amazing person. And anyway, we still didn't get the chastity talk. It ended up being just a chat session for us, which made her mad. It was funny. She really wanted us to get that chastity talk, the same talk that the elders were getting. She's so funny. But anyway, as we were talking about things, that she was our sister. I don't know if I should say her name or not, but mission president's wife, again, because there's not a title for her, right? One of the things she shared was about the advice that she got from the general authority when she and her husband were called to preside over the mission. And he just had one piece of advice to share with her, and she shared with us. All right. And this is what he said. Out of all the things that he could say to her to help out the sister missionaries, what he decided to go with was, please tell the sister missionaries that they don't have to dress so frumpy. And of course, we all kind of laughed at it.
Boo.
Right? Yeah, like we kind of laughed, but we all just like, and it's just so uncomfortable now that I'm thinking about it. I'm sure there are a lot of really mixed feelings but when you're just like constantly surrounded by misogyny and taking part in it yourself, sometimes, it's just, or I guess sexism. I don't know, you're just kind of blind to it sometimes. So we definitely didn't react positively to it, but definitely not as negatively as we should have. But I remember, again, it's the same sister that was talking to me about that. And she's like, did your packet have the same, I assume it did have the same kind of outfits as mine. And I said, yeah. She's like, those things, that's the definition of frumpy. So on the one hand, like they give us this example and they say like, this is what you should look like. This is what you should wear. And then, and then just be upset, that if we actually look like that. And then just second of all, I mean, why would that be your go-to anyway? Like, who cares even if we did all look frumpy, just again, he could have said anything that would have been supportive for us as sister missionaries. Yeah. So I don't know who that general authority was or area authority that said that, but I just want to say, like, eat a dick. You just
no, it's true.
Right.
Yeah, like as a missionary, we'll get to this. As a missionary, the sisters were always less than, and there was always the thing that why were the sisters there? Were the sisters there because they couldn't get married, or because they've got some women in the priesthood kind of crusade going on? So Maven, why did you go on a mission?
I'm glad you really brought this up. I can explain that, but I also want to say, every sister missionary, at least for sure before the age range like got dropped, we felt lesser all the time. And we knew going into a mission, it wasn't a secret, the stigma about us. So we always knew that was there. So for me, I think maybe not a crusade for the priesthood, but a kind of a crusade at some attempt at feeling equal. When you're in the church and you're a believer and you're female, you really want so bad to believe that you are equal, even though you don't have the priesthood. And so you really do kind of grab onto like whatever straw or carrot that gets thrown to you. So I think it was actually part of, it was shortly after finding out like that I would never ever have the priesthood, like I could never be in a kind of leadership role as a kid, that I did learn that there were sister missionaries, which I didn't know. I don't think, because I had never seen any, or that I remembered. I had been to Temple Square when I was really young, but it just didn't register. Every pair of missionaries that in every ward that I had ever been in were always male. So when I found out sisters could go, I just really liked that. And then of course, there's missionary worship, like hero worship in the church. They're just seen as so righteous and so spiritual. Plus they're doing like the most amazing thing, like they're spreading the gospel. It's the most important message that anyone can ever get. Like, again, I'm a full 100% believer. So for me, it really was like, I really did want to share the gospel because nothing seemed more like holy and awesome. Of course you would want to do that. And then two, I did want to feel, again, just like a little bit of equality with the elders. So even I remember a primary class where the chorister was just going to have like the boys sing the second verse of a song that was going to talk about missionary work or something like that. I think it was scripture power. I can't recall for sure. So she was like, well, which of you boys are going on missions? And so all the boys are raising their hands, but like, I'm like Hermione Grangering it too, like I'm going to serve a mission too, and they're like, well, you don't have to. It's like, I'm gonna go on a mission. And so like, she just let it be. And I sang the second verse along with all the boys about going on a mission with, this stuff. Yeah. So that was the reason I really always did want to go. And even as I got older, even when I realized that there would be a stigma, I just felt like it shouldn't matter, And I thought that's kind of an old-fashioned thing. Like, this is a modern day and age now. Like, this is in the 2000s. I'd be like, I can get that that's how it was for women in the 60s or the 70s, but like, come on. Yeah. So, and I kind of wonder. I don't know. I did know that I would be lesser, and I've shared before too. Like, right before I started was getting ready to finally turn in my papers, that's when I was starting to get a lot of negative comments from elders, just like, I would never ever marry a returned sister missionary. And that was the first time I realized that there was anything bad. I knew there was a stigma about why that we were going, because nobody wanted us, because we couldn't find a man that was more interested in us by the old age of 21, you know. But I didn't know that even if I went and came back, that just having gone alone would be enough, like, to strike me off of the list of other people. But in a way, like, it bothered me, but at the same time, I was like, well, if that's something that's going to make a difference for a guy, then I know I don't want that guy. And so, you know, good riddance.
Well, I'm going to hold my hands up, because no, I said that exact thing, that I wouldn't marry a returned sister missionary. But I think I didn't really have a reason for saying that, other than all the other guys around me were saying it. And I think what they were getting at was that stereotype of the only reason that a sister's on a mission is because she couldn't get married, or, you know, she's on a bit of a power trip or whatever. And I think they don't want to. As a missionary, you're equipped with lots of tools to deceive people, to twist situations to your advantage. You know, the commitment pattern, which is really just a sales pattern and a way to kind of make people feel better about doing things that they wouldn't normally do. So if you have two people in a marriage, you know, when, like you say, if you're in a patriarchal system, but your wife is your equal, it doesn't fit. You know, as elders, we were all, you know, they blow smoke up your ass constantly about leadership and, you know, becoming leaders of men. And everyone thinks as a missionary that they can be an apostle, or they can be the president of the church, because I'm serving a mission and I'm building that career through church. And what are the sisters?
But there's nowhere, like,
Yeah.
for sisters to go.
What are the sisters doing?
So
Why are they here? Why aren't they just at home, like darning socks and cooking pie? So I take my hat off to you, because I didn't want to go on a mission.
Yeah. I want to come back to that. But before I do that, I did want to say, I'm really glad you brought up, basically, the elders learn how to be salesmen. And I didn't have the words for it before, but it was something that I noticed, like, once I hit, 19, 20, 21, and I'm seeing elders come off of their missions, I start to realize, like, they just know how to talk well and very persuasively, and they're very good at, and most of the time I felt this, that they were genuinely very spiritual. And I did also, there were a lot of things contributing to me going on a mission, but this was one of them. It was a more of a minor role, but I did kind of feel a little bit unequal. And I did have, I think, it just kind of a sense that in dating returned missionaries, that they could smooth talk me. I didn't have it in those words, if that makes sense. And so I felt just a little self-conscious and not very confident. And that was like, I was extremely unconfident, period, no matter what. And so, yeah, I did have a sense that going into a marriage, that I was at a disadvantage and that I was lesser. So I think that was also part of wanting to serve a mission, was to also have that confidence and that spirituality. And then I felt like that would make me more equal with my husband. And then actually having gone on a mission, seeing how the sausage was made, so to speak, kind of brings the elders down just a little bit, and not in a bad way, but just in a human way. They're just not on this pedestal anymore that maybe they shouldn't have been on in the first place. They're human beings. And I want to say, like, I really loved the elders on my mission. None of them ever, except for the one that I've mentioned that I had a problem with, ever made me feel lesser at all or treated me weirdly. The ones I served with in my districts were fantastic. And so I just want to be very clear about that. So these are very, like, general topics we're going on. But anyway, I still learn, and not all elders are great. Some really are narcissistic. Some do take advantage. And so I just realized just how easy it is for I guess, for these powers, these skills you're being taught on a mission to be used for wrong, to be used to basically have unrighteous dominion, to manipulate, especially an 18-year-old girl, a 19-year-old girl, like fresh out of high school, who's just young and trusting, and she's been taught her whole life to be looking for an RM priesthood holder. You know, it's just too easy. It's too easy. So I think that could be part of why some elders resented sister missionaries as well, because, or returned sister missionaries, because just that holiness, that pedestal isn't there. You did a mission, but so did I. You know how to talk the talk, but so do I. So if this is going to work between us, like, I need to see you walk the walk also.
Yeah.
And you can't try to like spirit voice me, you know, into just following what you say. So I feel like that's also why some elders were like, I don't want that, because you would, you can't BS a returned sister missionary as easily.
No, absolutely. And I think that when I got in trouble when I was a zone leader, because there was a sister who was older. So one of the unique things, I guess, about being a sister is that
there's no limit, age limit.
Yeah, there's no age limit. So for an elder, when you hit 27, you're too old to then go on a full-time mission. But sisters, you can have a 21-year-old young lady serving with a 60-year-old sister, and you know that whole dynamic can be difficult. And there was a sister from Poland on our mission, and she was probably only in her 30s, but everyone kind of used to treat her like
that's
she was
ancient.
Yeah, exactly. You know, she was the outsider.
For an unmarried woman, yeah, 30s. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, because we were all just kids anyway. And in the area where I was zone leader, they were in a flat that was only like half a mile up the road from our flat, and they were in a threesome covering 2 wards, and this sister was getting left out. So I paid special attention to her, and then I got a phone call from the mission president one Sunday morning saying that he's coming over to the ward. He wants to meet with me and my companion after church. And I'm like, what's going on? He sat me down and he said, Elder, can you tell me about your relationship with sister da 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 da? I was just like, I'm a zone leader.
Heaven help you for being nice to somebody ostracized.
It was because I had learned the phrase in Polish for I love you. Okay. And we used it whenever we finished, you know, whether it was a phone call or anything. And she said to me, oh, I feel part of the zone. I feel inclusive. This is great. And it was just like, you know, like you say to someone, you know, I love you, man. But
I say it to friends.
Yeah. It was
all the time.
Some of the other sisters in the flat had reported me to say that we were in a relationship. And I said to the mission president, I said, you know, first of all, you're insulting me because I had a weird mission, because I served my mission pretty much at home. And my girlfriend from when I was 16 lived like 10 miles down the road from where I was serving. So I said to him, you know, I've got a car and I've got a mobile phone. If I wanted to be having a relationship with someone, I'd drive 10 miles down the road and see my long-term girlfriend, who's now my wife. You know, what makes you think I'd be in a relationship with an older sister on the mission? And he was explaining about the longer phone calls. And I was like, yeah, because she's covering a ward all by herself. You know, she needs support. We're giving her support. But no, I was in a relationship with her because we were giving her some extra support. And yeah, I didn't like that mission president anyway, and he didn't like me after that because I kind of told him he was a jerk, and that I wasn't going to stop being nice to her.
That's brave, or to me at least. Anyway, I would never have called anyone in leadership above me a jerk, like even with the experience that I had.
Yeah, no, he.
Well, I think with that one, I think that was the breaking point where I would.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Can we go on?
I just wanted to know, or you know, say your piece, but I did want to go back to you not wanting to serve a mission.
Yeah. So when I was 17, my bishop cornered me. Are you going to go on a mission? No, I'm not. But my dad was a convert when he was 17, served the mission. Interesting story. He was a convert, so no one else in his family had ever been on a mission or been through the temple or anything. He was sent out to the mission field in Bristol, in England. And on the first night, when there wasn't an MTC at the time, so the first night everyone was gathering together, and he said they were in a room and it was all bunk beds, and all these other American kids were getting undressed, and they were all wearing this weird underwear. And my dad got undressed and he just got his boxer shorts on, and they all looked at him, and he's like, "What? You all wear that weird underwear in America?" And he'd not been through the temple before they sent him out on his mission. So he then had to go to the dry.
Was that just an oversight, or they did things differently? Okay.
No, they just missed it.
Oops.
So he didn't know anything about it. And then that would have been when there was penalties and everything as well. So he had to go through the temple for the first time with just his companion, who he didn't know. Like, going through the temple, at least if you're with someone you know, you kind of cling on to the fact that they're not freaking out, so I'm not going to freak out. But yeah, he was just with his companion and had to go through the temple, so poor guy. But anyway,
Can't imagine.
I didn't want to go on a mission, but my dad had done it. 2 brothers before me had done it. A sister before me had done it. So it was kind of like just down the food chain. I was at the bottom, and it's like you say, it's a sausage factory. You just go through. And I've been looking at journals for a project that I'll talk about later. But looking at an MTC quote, I put in here that there's only one reason to stay. So I'm in the MTC having a really bad time, and that is not to disappoint anyone. I don't want to be here anymore. And I remember
sorry.
I hated it. Like, the MTC, my first area, my trainer was physically abusive, because I'm British in the fact that I don't like touching people and I don't like people touching me. He was American in the fact that he would touch me naked and wrestle me because he knew I didn't like it. And he was like a jock, and he'd let you know. But yeah, I hated it. And then fortunately, after a couple of months, Stockholm syndrome kicked in and I got on with it. But it's the old, every time I went to the MTC president to say I'm going home, he'd be like, "Oh, look at this quote from Gordon B. Hinckley. Forget yourself and go to work, elder." I'm like, go to work? I'm sat in a room doing jack shit. How do I go to work? But
they're asking where you served, but you said, was it basically your home stake, or like right next to it is what it sounded like? Okay.
Well, I'll just say now, the project that I've got going on, let me show you this image quickly. I've got a nice, okay, see those boxes there? My wife, who at the time was my girlfriend, for the last 17 years has lugged these boxes from house to house, and the amount of times that I have said, just throw it all away. There is every letter that I wrote to her, every letter that she wrote to me, several journals that I wrote my journal every day, fastidiously, like word of the night, fastidiously. Photos, loads of audio recordings. So you can't see that because
you're not on.
We had this little these little dictaphones. So
I had one.
Yeah. I was listening to some earlier though, and it's dirty. Like it's so
these
bad.
to your girlfriend?
Yeah, I was embarrassed just listening to it. It's like,
oh, that's funny.
Oh, let me tell you what I'm gonna do.
I sometimes wonder if this because I know a lot of it's a duty. Like you basically have to go whether you want to or not. And I wonder if that's also maybe part of where some resentment might come for sister missionaries, because and it would go both ways, because I think it must be irksome to elder, like especially like you, where you're forced to be there, you have to be there, and then here's these sisters who don't have to be there, but they're choosing to
Yeah.
be, like, and especially in the context of a church and it being righteous and you're sharing the gospel, that maybe it's just like a little bit like, the sisters are so
Yeah.
self-righteous, like they don't have to be here, but they're here. But it also, like, I had some resentment sometimes towards elders, because again, like, it was like a privilege for me to be there, and so I couldn't understand at the time why elders would not want to be there or would be upset about going um when like so many of us, like as women, were discouraged from going, and we had this whole stigma about it, and so it just, yeah, sometimes just kind of felt like, look, I had to work to be here, and
Yeah.
I'm going against a lot of stigmas here, like I am decreasing myself in a lot of ways to be here, and I know that I'm the butt of jokes and things like that, and but and so you have the gall, I guess, just to be like, I hate being here. It just seemed kind of whiny to me at the
Yeah.
time. So
No,
I feel like that might have added to, plus the age difference. I don't know if the church was doing it on purpose. I was thinking that today. Maybe like the church maybe kind of wants there to be at least a little bit. I mean, for obvious reasons, they didn't want us, like elders and sisters, to get a little too close, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I wonder if they did kind of sort of engender. It wasn't just about trying to get sisters married before 21, but yeah,
yeah.
supporting a little bit of
Well,
rivalry.
yeah, well, at least for me, it was really difficult because I got called. The mission border was like 1 mile from my home, and I got called to the mission that was a mile away, like the next
Okay.
one over. And
So it's
my
like when Utah people get called to Salt Lake or Orem, they're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay.
But the church in England is so small that you know everyone all over the country. I'm guessing in Utah there's a lot of people, but here we drive hours to go to dances because there's only one happening in the country that night. So I was going to places, and I was rocking up to church in my first area when I was super homesick. I sat down in like a sacrament meeting and looked around, and I'm like, why are my friends here? And then you talk to them and you're like, what are you doing here? They're like, we live here. I'm like, you live here? I used to see you at this
That
dance
would
or
be
whatever.
weird.
Yeah, and like I'd drive past my girlfriend on the street, and you look, but you couldn't touch, you couldn't say hello, because
That would be so strange.
she lived
I can't
in the
imagine.
mission. Yeah, I'd have elders with me who'd be like, dude, who's that girl that you're waving at? I'm like, it's my girlfriend. They'd be like, what do you mean that's your girlfriend? I'm like, well, we've been dating since we were 16, that's where she lives. They're like, what are you doing here? I'm like, oh, the Lord sent me here. I don't know. So it was like I had to still be at home, but I had to put home away for 2 years. Like I was saying to my kids earlier, I said, yeah, I couldn't talk to your mum for like in person for 2 years. What do you mean? Why not? Because Jesus said so. And it just seems so stupid now. But
Yeah.
it'd have been easier if I'd have been sent to the other side of the world or whatever, but I did it here, so yeah, it was crap.
That is unique. Yeah.
Yeah, and you'll find out all about it in the new project, which would be Missionary Memoirs. We're going to go from the call all the way through week by week, because there's some crazy shit that goes down, from killing missionaries to missionaries running away.
You say killing missionaries, so I think just for people who may not be, I guess, woke to the lingo, do you want to explain what that means?
Well, to be honest with you, it's a bit of both. Now that I think back to it,
Because we're not talking literal.
No, I think we did almost kill someone. But the lingo as a missionary is if you have a companion who is leaving, at the end of the transfer, when they leave, you kill them. So yeah, but okay.
For any Nevermos out there, or
Yeah.
those that didn't serve a mission and didn't know, that was the lingo of killing somebody off. But
So
yeah,
the church, in their wisdom, decided to give everyone a 1 meter long length of elastic, which was the. Have you seen these?
yeah, I had a green one. I
Yeah,
never
yeah.
used it. It's supposed to be for exercise, but like just knowing what I know about 18 and 19 and 20-year-old boys, like I can only imagine the shenanigans.
Why would you give someone? So they gave us all a meter long length of elastic that was about 4 or 5 inches in width, and it was supposed to be for resistance training. So they also gave us a book of exercises that we could do in the flat in the morning, like holding it and doing curls and different things. But that never happened. So the
I can imagine what did happen, but go ahead.
So in this one flat, the zone leaders were coming for exchanges, and my greenie was in the toilet, and this flat was just really long. Like all the rooms were one after the other, but if you had all the doors open, it was just a really long shooting gallery. And it had been Christmas. The members had bought us lots of candy, and they bought some quality streets. And in the quality streets, there's always this hard one, like the caramel. And my companion, he was a bodybuilder from London. He spoke like this. And he was really, really stocky, really big guy, like 300 pounds of just meat. And he'd gone down to the toilet, and this American elder, he said, "Oh, hey, let's get him," right? Now all the rooms step down a level as well as you go. So why, I don't know what we were thinking, but I stood on one side, the others only just stood on the other, and we held the elastic, and we made a big catapult. And this American kid picked up a toffee, put it in the elastic, and pulled it right back. And I said to him, if you hit him in the head, you're fighting him. And this elder, that my greenie, he opened the bathroom door, and this elder let fly, and I didn't even see this chocolate go. It was, all I saw was my companion grab his face, and I was like, oh my gosh. And he grabbed his face, and he was wearing glasses, fortunately, and it deflected off one of his glasses onto his cheek and cut his cheek. But he staggered backwards. He said, "Oh, I can't see." And he sat on the edge of the bathtub, and then he passed out and fell into the bathtub with his arms and legs kind of hanging out the front of it. So we all ran down, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I explain this? So I said, pick him up, let's put him in bed. Our bed was a long way away. I didn't even think, oh, is he breathing? What do we do? Pick him up, let's put him in bed. We dragged him out of the bathroom into this long galley kitchen, and we dropped him quite heavily, and he was out. Like, I was like,
how did that happen? Because you said it hit him in the glasses?
It hit the bottom of the glasses, and hit his cheek here. So some of the force, if he'd not have been wearing glasses, it would have taken his eye out. So
it was just that
popped the lens out of the glasses. Yeah. We found the chocolate later, and it had like the imprint of the frame of his glasses and stuff on it. Anyway, so he's on the ground, and after a minute or so, I thought, I should check if he's breathing. Unfortunately, he was still breathing. And then I was starting to think, do we call the mission president's wife? Because that's what you do if someone's not well. And then I saw his finger twitch, and I thought, oh, thank goodness he's still with us. And he came around, and we got him to bed, and we put him in bed, and he stayed in bed for the day. He probably had a bad concussion. And I went on exchanges, and I thought, oh, how are we going to explain it to the members? Because he's going to have a really big black eye. And he didn't, because we gave him such a good blessing. All he had was a little cut where his glasses had hit his cheek. And that was it. And
priesthood power.
Yeah. And
good job.
The Lord had protected me with because it was his fault that he gave us this elastic, you know. So,
Could we segue into my exercise story then, since we're talking about
yes.
that? Okay.
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. So one of our APs had been in the military, and he was an older elder. He hadn't planned on going on a mission, and then kind of changed, like it was able to squeak in right before that cutoff. But yeah, he had a military career. So they had thought that elders weren't maybe exercising as much in the morning during that time frame, that half hour that we have, that we should be doing it. So the APs had started to check on the elders at that time to see, and of course what they found was that a lot of elders were sleeping in through that point. And so they decided to do a boot camp at the next zone conference. But before I get to that, actually, I just want to ask you a question, and people in the chat can answer too. But as an elder, because I don't know if this might be more of an American thing or not, but what was your typical outfit for P-Day?
Pair of jeans and a t-shirt.
Okay. So we weren't allowed to have jeans, so it might just be an American thing, but it's basically a t-shirt and like basketball shorts.
Okay,
Like,
yeah.
That's what all the elders would wear. And and so for exercise also, t-shirts and basketball shorts, right? And even for sleepwear, I think, right? T-shirt and basketball shorts. So anyway, so those are all the same thing. So before the zone conference, they tell everyone wear your P-Day clothes or bring your P-Day clothes. So my companion and I do. But for sisters, sleepwear, workout wear, and the casual wear, those are 3 different outfits. And so they said P-Day clothes, so we brought our casual clothes. So mine was just like a t-shirt, a normal t-shirt. It had a turtle on it. I thought it was cute. And we weren't allowed jeans, but I did have a pair of trousers that were like khakis, basically. So I wore those. I guess like the most crucial part, the crucial difference between like those 3 outfits is the bra and the support that you have. So obviously at night, like you want to finally be free from the constriction that you've had all day. But during the normal day, it's just a normal, it does the job kind of a bra. But for working out, you need something, if you're more endowed like I and my companion were, at least like for our sizes, you definitely need extra support for something like that. But again, they didn't tell us what it was for. They just said, bring your P-Day clothes. So we all get lined up into the gym, you know, after everybody gets changed, and the AP who had been in the military starts boot camp. So it was kind of a surprise. My companion and I are up front. And I just want to say, because this was before the age change, sisters were really rare. And our zone, like our mission was kind of a long shape. So they actually split zone conferences into 2. So they didn't have like the whole mission all there together. So when we did our zone conference, my companion and I were the only pair of sisters there at all. All of the rest of the sisters happened to just be in the other part of the mission. So we're the only ones. Anyway, the elder starts off with jumping jacks. He's like, you know, and he's going to start, you know, like he's just very proper, very military. It was funny at first, you know, until my companion and I realized, so like we just froze and we didn't know what to do. And again, this actually like goes back to just kind of a lot of the stigma there is around sister missionaries about them being difficult or weird or whatever. Me and all of my companions, we did not want to be like that sister. We were always, I think, maybe more polite and more careful than we would have been otherwise, just because of knowing that. So even here at this really, really awkward thing where we're standing in front of elders, like supposing to do jumping jacks with attire that's not appropriate for that for us, we just freeze and we don't know what to do and that was the thing, like that was the first thought in my mind. It was like, I don't want to be difficult. I don't want to be a troublemaker. You know what I mean? So like we both just like look at each other, and we both had sweaters. I had a huge sweater that had belonged to my brother, super, super big and bulky. So like we run over, we grab our sweaters, put them on, because we're not going to be like, you know, because again, we don't want to be like, oh, the sisters couldn't handle boot camp. The sisters didn't want to exercise with the boys. They didn't want to, you know, like and none of the elders were like that. Again, like the elders that I was with were super great, and I don't think they would have done that. But still, like that fear is there. So yeah, so I get this big old, huge sweater on, and it was hot, like, and I did it. We did the jumping jacks, I did the push-ups, I did the running in place, like, as much as I could. And and I had fun. I'm laughing with the other elders because, like, I wasn't the only one that struggled with push-ups. There was one elder who was from Tonga, and so he was shouting stuff like nobody knows what he was saying, but he was just having difficulty. He could have been swearing in Tongan for all we knew, but we were just kind of laughing. And and I just thought, like, all right, that was a good lesson. We did get quite a bit of workout done. Like, anyway, that was it. I didn't say anything to anyone about that. Maybe my companion did, or maybe I might have, like, because we would have an individual interview with the mission president and the mission president's wife. So I think to his wife, I think I might have said, like, oh, I felt a little embarrassed about the jumping jacks, but I put on a sweater and it was okay. But I might have said something like that. But again, this is just like why the elders in my mission were really great, but also just goes to show just how little the sisters could be thought of sometimes,
Yeah.
And so word got around, I guess, that it had put us in a weird spot. And even when I found that out, even that made me uncomfortable, because I was like, oh no, like, the people are going to think that we were complaining about this. But that AP and his companion actually called us that night to apologize to us. And I think it was very sincere. I don't think, like, they were being forced to, or if they were great at acting like they weren't. But they were just like, we are so sorry, sisters, if that made you uncomfortable. And they told all the sisters for the next zone conference, like, to wear workout clothes, and so they knew that they would be working out and would be able to be dressed appropriately. And they'd heard about it too. So the next time we did actually, like, I think transfers get to meet with some of them, they were just like, I can't believe that happened. I don't know what I would have done, And so anyway, that's my, I guess, kind of funny, but kind of sad exercise story. And again, it's just like the sisters weren't thought of, I think, because the elders wear the same thing for all of those things. So, why not the sisters? And there's another thing too, if I can branch into this, or did you want to say something about that first?
No, go for it.
Okay. Going into summer. So I think I mentioned this before, but I served in Philadelphia, and so, so just the summers were getting hot. And so I remember at one zone conference, mission president went up and said, all right, now that it's getting warmer, elders, you don't need to wear your jackets. And if you don't have tattoos, of course, then you can wear the short sleeve white shirts instead of the long sleeve ones. And then as he was turning to go away, and this is why I loved my mission president's wife. She was just such a spunky woman. She, like, calls out from her seat, like, what about the sisters? And I remember my mission president looking confused and being like, I know, like, I'm sure he's thinking in his head, like, they can wear short sleeves already. Like, there's no requirement like that. And they don't wear, like, suit jackets. So he looked at her and he was like, the sisters. And then she just yells out, pantyhose. And everyone started laughing because that was a requirement for missionaries, for sister missionaries, was to wear nylons. I mean, that's what we call them now. None of us called them pantyhose, but it was just funny. So yeah, and I think this also, because everyone knows pantyhose are really, really thin, but that doesn't mean that they're not really, really hot. And in fact, there's actually an investigator that my companion and I would talk to, and it really distressed her to see that we were wearing nylons because it was so warm out. And she's like, do you have to wear those? And we would explain, well, yeah, it's just part of the dress standards. We agreed to it. We always try to, like, make it sound better than it is. Like, we agreed to it, but it was something she commented on every time because they are hot. They can be really, really thin, but it's like an extra layer of skin almost. So, and even with the skirt, even, with the breeze going on, it can be extremely hot in the summertime. So anyway, so at this zone conference, our sister mission president shouts out, what about pantyhose? Like, the sisters and the elders, we all equally laugh about it. He turns to her, he says, like, are those hot? And she's like, yeah. And so he was like, okay. So he came, to the mic and he was like, hey, sisters, you don't have to wear pantyhose. And so, like, which we were really glad about. And it was funny because I went and saw that investigator again, and my companion and I told her, like, hey, our president said we don't have to wear pantyhose anymore, or nylons. And she didn't seem as excited as we thought she would be. And of course, now I see that, like, I mean, she was happy for that, but she was probably really disturbed that we needed permission from a man to not have to wear those anymore when it was hot outside. So that's probably why her reaction was a bit more, I guess, less than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, that's awesome, because I never would have it goes to that thing of like we were saying earlier about Brad. It goes to the thing of informing people from an experience point of view. You know, he doesn't know what it's like outside the church because he's not left the church and lived that life. I've not worn pantyhose, so I don't have an idea about that, but you do. But when we just say to all the sisters, no, go away, be quiet, you know, the rules
A lot
are
of things
very,
are missed.
yeah, it's very man centric, isn't it? So
Yeah. And especially with there being no women in leadership, like the mission president's wife. I mean, and then other than training, that's all we had. So, and again, she's not in the meetings that the elders are having, the APs are having with the mission president, where they decide to go ahead and have this announcement. That because if she had been in that meeting, then it would have been brought up there too, and she wouldn't have had to shout it from her seat, you know, at the zone conference, because this was the first she was also hearing. But I'm glad she did. She had our back. So
yeah, well, they have female APs now.
yeah, I have heard that. Which they could. Oh, AP is like female. That's really cool.
They're not
I did know they started more leadership positions with the age change because there's so many more sisters now. Like they have to.
Yeah, they're not
You know?
called APs. They're called something like training sisters or something like
Yeah.
that. But they are
That's right,
APs
okay.
basically.
So they work directly with the mission president then.
Yeah, and then travel around the mission to all the sisters' areas to train with those sisters.
Okay.
But that's what
I'd
APs.
assumed it was like a zone leader, but I guess it's slightly better than that.
Yeah,
It's more
no, yeah,
AP
it's
level
just-
if they at least have like that higher access.
Yeah,
So.
I mean they can't give blessings or anything,
Mhm.
obviously, but they
Right.
go around and train all the other sisters and look after those sisters and report back to the mission president.
I still think they did that because they had to. Because of the influx of sisters. I don't feel like it's because they actually were like, let's give leadership positions to the sisters.
Not at all.
It just got to be too much.
Yeah, so here's a question from left field. Did you ever have any problem falling asleep in weird places?
Okay, so no, not in weird places, but I could fall asleep at the drop of a hat. And I did have, and I think other missions have done this too, but our mission combined kind of lunch and dinner. So instead of taking an hour off 2 times a day, we just took 2 hours off at around 2 or 3 o'clock. And of course, we would come into the apartment and we would pray like we should, because we prayed all the time for everything ever. I don't know if you were like this, but we prayed before we left. We prayed to try to pick a place to go. We prayed when we came back into the apartment. We prayed before we left. But there were times that I fell asleep on my knees at the couch, like when we were praying, when we just got back to the apartment. And there were times I slept the whole 2 hours. Like I didn't even eat. And then we prayed again and would leave. But I could. Yeah. I mean, if I didn't have a companion that also, you know, like I could have fallen in the street or on a sidewalk. I could have. I was always tired.
Well, over here in the UK in wintertime, the buses are the warmest place to be if you're not like in your home. It's always wet, it's very humid, and if you sat at the back of the bus with the vibration of the engine, you just kind of slump over.
Totally would have.
Miss the bus stop and end up going miles out of the way. But talking about praying to find where to knock. So we prayed one time and I chose the street and we went to this really rough end of the city to go knock this street, and the street didn't exist anymore. It was just like a field of rubble. The lampposts were still there, but all the houses were gone and it was just like rubble. And I'm like, oh, where's this street? I can see it on the map where we've circled. But yeah, it wasn't there. The Holy Ghost was playing tricks on me that
PD,
day.
it was just testing you to see if you would be obedient, and you passed the test. That's how I would have, you know, it just strengthened your ability to listen to the Spirit. So that's how I would have rationalized that.
I had this mysterious, so from a man's point of view, every now and then you'd wake up and you'd be like, oh, what's going on? Like my pants are all wet. And that's just what happens, you know? But I was starting to see I'd got really navy sheets. that I'd carry around with me, some nice Egyptian cotton sheets, and starting to find stains on them around the middle of my bed, just little white stains. I'm like, what is going on? And they were just multiplying. So I'd wash it, and then these stains would come back. Like,
You didn't know what they were?
No, I didn't know what they were.
Interesting.
It wasn't semen. Sorry, everyone who's
Okay.
listening. I knew
that would be my assumption. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that was my first go-to. I'm just like, what's going on? It wasn't that. So I'm like, what's going on? Anyway, go to a new area.
Prank?
The stains moved from the middle of the bed to the foot of the bed. So I'm like, what is it? What have I changed? And then I realized what it was. It's at night when I go brush my teeth, then I'd come back in and I'd kneel down to pray, and I'd be on the bed and I'd fall asleep and drool a little bit. It was toothpaste.
Oh my, that's so funny.
It was toothpaste. But for the longest time, for months, I'm just like, what is it?
That's so funny.
Little bit.
I had something where, so I was falling asleep during scripture study for a while in my first area, and I felt so guilty over it. I felt like a bad missionary for doing this, and I would try so hard not to. And I again, like, I was there because I wanted to be. I loved the scriptures. So I was just like, I felt so bad. And of course, my companion could see that. It was just starting to be an issue, and it finally occurred to me one day that the medicine, my mom had sent me some allergy medicine because I had really been struggling. And it just occurred to me one day that maybe it was that medicine, because a lot of it can make you sleepy. And so when I went and I looked at the ingredients, I had the diphenhydramine hydrochloride, and of course, at the time, because I was praying, I felt bad. I was trying to repent for it and like telling God how sorry I am that I can't stay awake for like the scripture study time, and so I felt like it was an answer to prayer, like the thought popped into my head that it was the medicine. But yeah, that was just a similar experience of something where I'm like, what's going on? And then you find out it's just a really normal, natural thing. But I did kind of wonder actually if I know if Satan was making me sleepy or something. But anyway.
Yeah, well, it's everything on your mission. Anything that's going wrong, it's Satan's fault.
Of course.
Who's tempting you or whatever it might be. We had a whole, like a 6-man flat of missionaries with the zone leaders, etc., who were all starting to fall asleep and having issues and talking to the mission president. And it turned out that one of the elders who was new to the flat, he was really like particular about his milk. He would not share his milk. So when you're in like a 6-man flat, the best way to get good food is to buy in bulk. Everyone just puts it together. But he's like, no, my milk is my milk and that's your milk. So everyone was drinking milk from one carton. He'd have his own little private one, and there was a reason. It was because he was drugging the milk, and all the elders were sleeping soundly and were struggling to get up in the night. And it wasn't until this guy's last transfer that he got found out, because what he was doing was I
just want to know what was he doing? He
was drugging the milk, and then he was going out at night to meet a girl from his last area who would like a YSA who would drive across, and they'd go on dates. And it wasn't every night, obviously, but he was just regularly dropping like cough whatevers into the milk, so that all of his companions, all the people in the flat, would be sleeping soundly all night.
That's nuts.
So you got guys who had never had any problem with waking up in the morning, staying awake or anything, and they go into president's interviews and saying, I feel really bad because I'm falling asleep studying. I really can't, get up in the morning anymore. And president put it together, and yeah, it was this guy's last transfer. He was his own leader, and it was a friend of his YSA girlfriend called the mission president when she found out and told him, and this guy just got gone in a heartbeat.
But he was close to finishing. Like, did they send him home honorably still, or?
No, he'd only got
wasn't.
he'd only got like 4 weeks to go. But he got put in an aeroplane and sent home with a smacked bottom. But yeah.
But I feel like he was there long enough that probably he wouldn't have had to tell people. Like, it still probably looked more okay. I'm wondering now, because I remember seeing, I don't know if it was on Reddit or like on Imager, actually, a story of a missionary, and this was when I was still faithful, who posted that he drugged his companion so that he could go, and he said like he was having sex with a girl. And I remember being just so disturbed by that, and I was so disturbed by the comments, like, of course, calling the church a cult and mission life a cult and saying like elders can't leave, it's really restrictive. And I remember just being like, that's not true, like you can leave, which, I mean, technically you can leave, but again, I'm unaware of just the level of influence and the pressure that comes from staying. But still, like, I definitely wanted to be on record that, like, even though I do agree now, it's hard to get off a mission, that does not excuse this kind of behavior at all, ever. Like drugging somebody else. I don't care how, like, if you have the gall to do that, then you should have the balls to talk to your mission president and insist on going home.
Yeah.
Like, if you can go that far, you know what I mean? So anyway, I wonder if it's like that guy, or if this is just a different story of a different missionary doing the same thing. He didn't make it sound like a group. It sounded like just the two of them. So it could be different, but it's just crazy.
Well,
level.
This guy carried it on over several companionships. So he started it when it was just two of them and he was training a kid. And then he got moved up into this larger.
I wonder now
where he got caught. But so many crazy stories. There was one elder who got into a relationship with a less active sister who was twice his age, and she got pregnant. And yeah.
How does this happen? I mean, I know, like, not how does pregnancy happen? But what, like, where's the companion? What, like,
so
how does this happen?
What happened was Brian Middleton, I can say his name because he was on an earlier episode, The Bear of Leeds. He was the companion, and he put me straight. And basically, he had some medical issues and was in hospital, and so his companion just kind of took the car keys and did one, and drove off to see this lady, and yeah, they were smashing it. And he confessed to the mission president when he found out she was pregnant, and that unfortunately she miscarried like a few days later, but he'd confessed already. So the AP said to me they had to take him to say goodbye to her because he wouldn't leave without saying goodbye to her. So they took him, and he was like, the AP said that they went into the corner of the room, was just making out. And like her daughter, who was older than the missionaries, was there, and the AP said to her, "It's a bit weird, isn't it?" And she was like, "Yeah, it's a bit weird." So he went home.
Of course, it didn't blow up anywhere because it could have, but no one but the insiders hear about it, right?
Yeah, but he went home and he came back the next week on his missionary visa and married her, and they lived in the ward one over from where I was bishop for a while, and then went back to Utah for a while, and I think they've come back now, and they're probably 15 miles from where I am now.
So crazy.
And you're like, but
people always ask you, like, they always want to know how you met,
Yeah.
So what's funny is, like, even like with the whole stigma with sister missionaries, when my youngest brother served a mission, I told him, I said, don't be like this when you come back. Don't be like, I would never date a sister missionary. And I told him how hurtful it was. And then the little bastard comes back and he does exactly that. I will not date returned sister missionaries. No, you just don't get it, blah, blah, blah. But luckily, I mean, after a year or so, he actually ended up dating a sister that had been in his mission. So it's kind of funny because now when people ask, like, how did you meet? Like, they say, we met on our mission. That's the truth. But they always have to say, but we weren't those kind of missionaries. Like your missionary.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny. They have to, like, there's that caveat of, like, we weren't bad.
It
was way after we came back, like, there's nothing funny going on there. I just think it's funny. because of
So-
stories like that, people know everyone's heard a story like that.
Yeah. And there's nothing stranger than, just telling teenagers that you've got to go for 2 years and you live in this artificial kind of world, because in the real world, you're just a bunch of 19-year-old kids who don't have a college education, and you're wasting your time. But as a missionary, I remember being like, oh, we've got the world is our oyster, we've done this 2 years and it's amazing. And maybe if you go back to Salt Lake and you can say that you're a honorable return missionary, that's a great thing. But here in
All
England,
the ladies are into you. Yeah.
yeah, but here in England, everyone's just like, you did what for 2 years? And you're like, oh, I went door to door selling religion. And I'm like, are you stupid?
Are you
just,
talking about members?
no, just like the real world.
Okay.
So
Well, see, that's your problem there. You should only be dating members, and then they
But-
would worship you the appropriate way.
but have you ever sat in a job interview and they said, what did you do for those 2 years?
A job interview is different.
Yeah.
But I mean, I came back to Utah, so it would have been fine.
Yeah.
Noble.
That's what I mean.
Volunteer work.
Volunteer work. Over here,
Mm-hmm.
they're just like, you did what? We don't want to know. Are you going to try and sell us that religion now? What can you do? Anyway, I think whatever you think of a mission, we all came out with some positives, whether that's just that we can do this and we're happy to speak publicly about what are very personal issues sometimes, or whether it's just that we passed the time, made some new friends, and just enjoyed ourselves. But Maven, thank you so much for
I had a
coming
good time.
on, and giving us your point of view. Is there anything you want to say to everyone before we wrap up?
Well, I just wanted to add that I thought it would come up, and then I forgot to. Just the idea of feeling lesser, and a big part of it was like with baptisms, because we could never baptize our converts, even though we would get very close to them. And in general, again, just as sisters, the church does a really good job of doing a number on us to where we could support the patriarchy, and we support the things that are against our interests and against our own voices and power. And so if there's, I guess, more than 3 sisters around, even if you say something just a little bit kind of maybe like, why can't we do this? One will usually correct. But in a lot of my companionships where it's just the 2 of us, especially like for somebody that we taught, that we loved, and they had progressed towards this point of baptism, we did have just like that little bit of freedom to ask ourselves, to ask each other, like out loud, like why can't we baptize them? Like, it just doesn't, at the end of the day, it's just like, we have vaginas, and that's the only difference, really. But because of that, like, we can't just dress in white and take our converts into the water and introduce them into this great thing, the thing that we think is so great. And we would just be like, I don't know, I don't get it. And then just be like, oh, well, and then again, call the elders so that they can interview our person. Anyway, that's the last bit. I guess I am still having an issue with my YouTube. I don't know if I am trying to, like, I guess, put things out there on Twitter if anyone knows ways to get through. Actually, Marka, who's been in the chat, is trying to help me with something. So I'm going to, I think, work that angle a little bit more. But anyway, I'll try to keep people updated for people who are in on that. So anyway, that's it.
If there is anyone with the inside track on YouTube, then please let us know. Either get in touch with me through Facebook or YouTube, or look up Maven on Mormonism Live or on Facebook, because YouTube, there's a bot somewhere who's done a bad job and deleted Maven's account. So we need to try and get it back. When it comes to accounts, we want to try and push for 750 subscribers, everyone. We're at 591, and I feel like we can get to 750. So please share with your friends, share with just anyone. Okay. That's my begging. If you feel that you can contribute, again, the QR code's just in the top corner, or the link is in the description below. Thank you everyone for being with us this evening.
I would say, if you're not subscribed to PD, and if I had a channel and you would subscribe to me, put that over towards PD.
Oh, give your subscribers. Thank you, Maven.
Yeah, the
Or,
subscribers that I can't get. I'm being
or
very generous, PD.
yeah,
Sending
yeah.
them your
Or
way.
you can subscribe to both. It's free, so feel free to click. But yes, thank you. Thanks for being here. Next week we have Marco Fuentes, who has been in the chat this evening, and
Yep.
we'll be chatting with Marco and seeing what Mormonism looks like from his point of view. We'll also have the unboxing video on the beginning of Missionary Memoirs starting on Sunday evening, where I'll explain to you all just a little bit more about that and about my really weird mission. But for now, thank you. Let's hope that Mormonism, let's hope they do flip their lid this week and we get even more Brad Wilcox going. Ski Cat just subscribed. You see that down below? That's the first time the little alert box has come up. That's fantastic. Thank you, Ski Cat. But thanks, everyone. Have a good one, and we will catch you next time. See ya.
Thank you. Bye.